You are listening to the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willard. I'm sitting here with Pastor Mike Rigglesworth, and we have your man, Bradley, the man with no last name, with us on the computer, on the Zoom link, not the Google Meet, even though Google's trying to force us to use their...
Google Calendar is stupid.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's coming at us. But we are excited to be here with another great episode for you guys. But before we get into that, let us drop the music and go through the coffee that we are drinking. Today, we have two different coffees because Bradley's with us on Zoom. But Mike and I are in the studio right now, and we are drinking a coffee called Roast Portugal from Delta Cafe. Roast Portugal. The flavor is... universal. I don't know what that means.
It's just general coffee.
It's just general coffee, but let me read you on the back. It's actually pretty good. It's kind of nutty.
It's very good.
Is
it in
tasty.
Portuguese on the back?
Yeah, it's all different languages. But the English part, let me read you that. It says, an authentic and aromatic blend that suits Portuguese tastes, made from various Arabica and Robusta beans from some of the best grown regions of the world. This is a full-bodied and slightly acidic coffee that is always perfectly roasted.
Yes.
Yes.
And thank you to the Murno family.
Oh, yeah.
From our church. Well, they relocated to Portugal, and so they're here for the summer, and they came back with a bag of coffee from Portugal.
It's actually really good.
For the podcast, yeah.
It's not
good.
heavy. It's not too light. It's like right down the middle of what you want a coffee.
It is. It is nice, smooth coffee.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Mm-hmm. So, Bradley, what are you drinking today?
I got Bones coffee from the grocery store.
His favorite, or one of his favorites.
Because
Wonderful.
in Florida, we can buy good coffee at grocery stores.
And you had the dark chocolate flavor going?
Yeah, I got the Army of Dark Chocolate, which is I found out as a reference to the movie Army of the Dead, because the cover art is like amazing on these, as always. And then I realized it's the movie cover of Army of the Dead from the 80s.
Interesting.
Yep. That was
It was a really bad movie, but it was bad in a good way.
It's a Evil Dead sequel, isn't it?
Evil Dead, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Never seen them. But I've had the coffee.
Bruce Campbell,
It's delicious.
the original Spider-Man trilogy. He's
I've never seen it.
He's in that. He stars in it. Yeah.
Ryan, it's kind of like one of those like Sharknado movies where it wasn't supposed to be good, but it is because it's bad.
Yep.
It's kind of like that.
Shark Week coming up next month.
All right.
Got a new hat for it. It's a Yankees hat with a big great white shark on it.
Great. I care nothing about Shark Week. I'll just say that. Don't care about Shark Week. The only shark that I'm familiar with at all is Baby Shark, because our 2-year-old son, he wants to watch it. He points to the TV and goes, fish?
Fish?
Actually, he says fish. Fish. Yep.
Hook them on air jaws. That's all I know.
That's right.
But, Mike, we're going to toss it over to you before we go into the main topic for today, because we have another section of Play It.
The good, the bad, and the churchy. Oh, yeah. My voice went up an octave a little bit. Apparently, I'm not done with puberty.
The bad,
maybe I'll grow a few inches. So maybe that's a possibility. So, the good, the bad, the churchy, and so this is sort of a mixed bag. There's some good things, there's some bad things in here, and it is very much to do with the church. Now, if you were listening to this, you are somebody who grew up in the throes of the megachurch. You're probably familiar with Hillsong. You're probably familiar with Hillsong, and you may be familiar with Hillsong New York. And a couple of years ago, there was a documentary that came out of Discover, I believe, called Hillsong: A Church Exposed. And my wife and I watched it, and it was basically a hit piece on Carl Lentz, the pastor of Hillsong New York. And if you don't know who Carl Lentz is, he's a very outgoing, gregarious, charming, charismatic guy, like the right personality you would want to helm a church that you wanted to see grow.
Right.
And if you followed Hillsong New York, they grew exponentially. And Carl Lentz, it was interesting. He kind of stole the limelight. He was so charismatic and popular that people who attended his church didn't even fully know that Hillsong was
Christian?
well, not even that it was Christian, but that Hillsong is actually, their origin is in Australia. Like their main campus is in Australia. But because of his popularity, Carl Lentz just really took Hillsong New York by storm, and he really grew it. And we're not going to go into all the details around Carl Lentz's story, but essentially he had an affair which disqualified him from ministry. And in 2021, I believe, he openly confessed that he had done this, and he had effectively resigned from his position as lead pastor of Hillsong New York. And in the aftermath of that, there was a whole bunch of things that came out of Brian Houston, who's the lead pastor of Hillsong in Australia. And there was a whole bunch of things that came out with him covering up childhood sexual abuse on behalf of his father.
Jeez.
And, him not handling that properly, and a lot of other things that he had done personally that were not becoming of a pastor of a church. So there's another documentary that came out just this past year called The Secrets of Hillsong. And that was put out by Hulu, and it was a much better produced and just a better told story, all in all. And one of the interesting things about this is that Carl Lentz himself agreed to sit down and talk with the people who are doing this documentary, realizing that he had no creative control in how he was portrayed in this film. Right? Now, here's what I want to lock in on today with you guys and talk about before we get into the topic of today. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's an interesting point of discussion. Carl Lentz is they talked about this in the documentary. He's a very good actor. Like he could get up on a stage and cry on a dime, right? If I cry in front of the congregation, it's sincere, because I don't typically do that, right?
Yeah.
I did that maybe twice in the time that I've been here at Centerpoint. But Carl Lentz could do it pretty much like every sermon.
That's dangerous.
So he's a phenomenal actor, right? And if you watch the documentary, you would sit down and you would hear him talk, and you would think to yourself, I don't know if he's acting or if he's being sincere. I'm not sure, right? So as somebody who's really gifted at communication, gifted at manufacturing emotions, how do you discern that? Like, what do you guys think?
Oh, geez, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I unfortunately think he's in a cry wolf situation.
Okay.
Where I believe everyone knows that story where the kid jokes around, cries wolf, while the town comes to run to save the kid, and finally on the third or fourth attempt, there's actually a real situation where the kid was being attacked by a wolf, and everyone's like, I'm not going to believe him type thing.
I gotcha.
So I've seen a couple pastors in my life where every single sermon it seemed like they are crying at a specific point at a specific time that was almost perfectly tuned in a location. If it was like a song, right? It was like the bridge of the song,
right,
that they cried at every single time, and it started to get to the point of like, this is strange to me. This is very unusual. So I don't know if there's like an algorithm or a specific code you can input to notice if it's fake or not, but it seems very strange to me when it becomes to be a pattern, or it comes to be very systematic in the formulation of how a sermon is given. Right. That these kinds of emotions sort of rear their heads. Well, it seems scripted to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because he is a really good actor, but if you look at what he's done since this all took place, after he nearly blew up his marriage and his family, which they're all still intact.
Yeah.
There's actually, their family seems to be in a better place, in a healthier place in the aftermath of this. Like, what he did, the reality of that is always going to be with them to some extent, right?
Yeah.
But what he does with that, how he responds to that, I think is different. And listening to him and seeing him walk through this journey, like he's done counseling, he's done the hard work, he's examined some of the crap from his childhood that he carried with him into the ministry that he never really dealt with. I don't know if you guys heard this. There were articles that were posted saying that Carl Lentz is now on staff at this megachurch called Transformation Church.
Oh, great.
And so initially,
I have it pulled up right now.
That was a red flag that popped up in my mind. It's like, okay, now he's on staff at a church. But if you go on the website, you don't see anything about Carl Lentz. And what he does is he tells you that he's actually in a consulting role. He's not paid at all, but he's actually sort of functioning as an advisor to the pastor of that church, as to say, here's what to be aware of, here's what not to do, almost functioning in an accountability role.
That's kind of cool.
And he does advertising and marketing for his day job. That's what he does. Like he's not in front of people. He's just he's interfacing with customers.
Yeah.
But he's not actually like in front of an audience. Like he's recognized, like, this is not a healthy thing for me. I should not be doing this. So, hey, he could be pulling the wool over our eyes. He could be acting. But based on what I saw, I don't know. I think the guy's really sincere. I think there's some really hard work that he's done, and it gives me hope for the future of the church. That
That's
somebody who's in that position could get,
changed,
released, but not just jump back into this position where they're in front of people and they're craving the power and the glory and the fame. But they're actually like able to say, like, look, Jesus has changed me in this area of my life, and I need to pursue a different path.
Yeah.
Like there's grace and there's forgiveness and there's mercy, but that doesn't mean that I am automatically restored into this position that I was in before,
right?
Before I sinned, And
I
so
think
that gives me hope.
I think it's a good thing too. I'm trying to find his name actually, but we talked about him in the gun control episode. The one pastor that we had on, who was also in a mega church. I can't remember his name.
James McDonald.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mentioned in that episode when we did the good, the bad, and the churchy on him, that I think it's important that pastors know, and people in general know, like when their time is up in that certain event, in their life. So, maybe, if you're in high school, like you're not a high school student forever. Like you have to know when your time is up. You can't be Billy Madison,
right,
21 and still in fifth grade,
Yeah.
So you have to know when your time is up in that role and when you need to step onto a different role. And it's not, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's a bad thing. Sometimes, it's the thing that you don't want to do, but you have to know when to say enough is enough, or, my time is up with this. And I think that's inspiring to me, at least, to see that he's not saying, like, I'm going to try and be another pastor. I'm not going to try and be another big mega church pastor. He's kind of said, okay, I kind of screwed up there. Let me go do this other thing and help somebody else not screw up. But I will say with him, he's one of those people that I have a hard time believing, just because of how charismatic he is. So, I mean, you can do all the work you want, but I'm going to have and I'm sure other people are too, but I'm going to have a hard time trusting you again, just because of how easily likable you are. It kind of rubs me the wrong way, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's also something that, love is something that we extend unconditionally to anyone, right? But trust is something that has to be earned. It is something that's conditional. And so I think it's going to be a matter of time to see, like, okay, is this guy has he continued to be faithful to his wife and his kids? Is he continuing on this path towards spiritual and emotional and mental health? Or is he going to slip back into old behavior patterns? Because those things, they don't just undo themselves overnight. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it.
I think it will be interesting to see where he is in as little as like 6 months.
Sure. Yeah.
I just think that right now he's off to a good start. But 6 months is a lot longer than it seems.
Sure.
Especially if you're, somebody that went from being, the top of your game to the lowest low that you could have.
Right.
And so I think it would be interesting, 6 months from now, is he still on the same path? Or did he kind of like flip and go back to where he was?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But I'm encouraged by the work that he's done in contrast to some of what we've seen from, other megachurch pastors who have just jumped right back into the public life,
Yeah.
So anyway, enough of that. Ryan, what do we got for us today?
Yes, so we have a two-parter for you guys today. Obviously, first part in what you're about to hear, second part next time we record. So every once in a while, we do a series on a book that we read. Mike, you just did one with on a chapter in a book that you just recently read with guest speaker, right?
Yeah, he came in and it wasn't a review, but it was kind of an interview on a chapter, and it was excellent. It was awesome.
It's fantastic. That should be dropping before this one. So you guys go back and listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great...
Yeah, it'll actually be dropping the week that we're recording this one.
Yeah,
All
so it was a
right.
great interview. Go and listen to that. But we have a book that I read by Dr. Gary Habermas. And for those who are not familiar with Gary Habermas, he is the world-leading theologian, philosopher, and historian on the resurrection of Jesus.
So quick fun fact about Gary Habermas. He's a brilliant scholar. He doesn't sound like he's a brilliant scholar. If you listen
No.
to his interviews,
Yeah.
like there's a guy at the church I used to pastor at in Orchard Park. It's a suburb of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy, like Gary Habermas, sounds exactly like this guy.
Yeah.
He's this guy that I'm talking about in our church. He's wonderful. He's friendly. Not necessarily the
The sharpest
scholar.
tool in the shed.
Yeah.
Not a scholar, but friendly guy, wonderful guy. And Gary Habermas sounds exactly like him. So whenever I listen to Gary Habermas, I think of this guy.
He is actually putting out a book. Hopefully, in the next 2 years, he's writing his opus before he dies, right? He's still young, but before he dies, I think it's 8,000 pages.
Oh my word!
Like it's going to be in a series of books, and it's all over the past 5 decades. He has stored up in his database tens of thousands of scholarly sources from philosophy to archaeology, only pertaining to the resurrection of Jesus. And he's compiling it all into one source for everyone.
That's awesome.
Before he passes. So when I mean he is the world-leading philosopher and historian on the sources in Jesus' resurrection, I don't take this lightly.
Yeah.
It's like everyone bows their knee to this guy when it comes to this topic. That's just
metaphorically speaking,
metaphorically,
of
right?
course.
It's just one of the. He's just that guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he wrote a book that I have in my hand titled "Risen Indeed: A Historical Investigation into the Resurrection of Jesus." And this is just a small snippet of the back corner of his mind when it comes to thoughts towards a historical investigation. But today, I wanted to just talk to you guys about one particular chapter, and then we'll finish the book in the next one. We'll go through different sort of possible explanations that he gives just specific to this book. But he has a chapter in chapter 4 called Reason in Faith. And the reason why I wanted to start this off, because I think it lays a foundation for how we understand faith and reason, how we look into sources, how we sort of investigate worldviews ourselves, right? Because one of my concerns, and I'm sure you guys have all heard this, is, and as someone who does theology and apologetics and philosophy, is when people hear you're a Christian, they associate this idea of an irrational leap of faith, right? That is attached to specific beliefs, and he wants to sort of counter this understanding. And we'll go into more of what a leap of faith actually is and historically where it came from, because that actually comes from a specific historical view within the language of what a leap is attributed to. If you go to my TikTok, I actually give a little history about that.
Yeah, it's a misquote.
Definitely. So one of the things that I found fascinating was through the the history of this idea of faith and reason and how they go hand in hand, how it has dramatically changed in definition and in terms. So let me give you a little quick history behind it. I'm going to go back to one of the church fathers, Tertullian, right? And I'm going to read some of the sources and quotes that he has in this source. Tertullian believed that not only faith was primary, but that all reference to human philosophy or other teaching should be excluded. So faith was just generic, not backed by history, not backed by facts, not backed by anything. You just believed, and that was it, right? And then you get to the 12th century St. Bernard, voicing faith alone is all that matters, and quote-unquote, reason has no play in this, which is really interesting, right?
It's interesting.
Augustine states this: reason and understanding do play a part, but only as secondary to faith. Faith precedes them. Therefore, we must exercise faith first before we can use our reason and logic. Then we move on to Anselm, right? Anselm agrees with this. Then we move on to like Arabic philosophers like Averroes, where he says reason was primary and faith was subordinate to it. So all of a sudden we see throughout history
It flip-flops,
It flip-flops, right? It flip-flops. And I think there's a good reason why it flip-flops. Aquinas says this, and I actually fall in the line of Aquinas here. He says there's a harmony between the two. Some truths we understand by reason and some by revelation.
I would agree with that.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so he wants to investigate this. And so he starts off by looking into, as Christians, right, we are investigating if we can think Jesus rose from the dead from historical grounds, or is it just this irrational, not based in history, right? And he has 50 books on just all the historical sources, ancient early church sources, all the archaeology. Like, he's one of those guys that goes, okay, I can look into the facts of this stuff.
Right.
But he sets off in this chapter to going, let's discuss sort of this connection between reason and faith. Now, before I go into these definitions that he brings up, are you guys familiar? And I've experienced this a lot, right? Where, oh, you're a Christian, all right, leave your logic at the door type worldview. What do you guys think about that? Have you experienced that in your lifetime too?
The new lingo is you believe in a sky daddy.
Sky daddy?
A sky daddy? Okay.
Yeah, that's the new lingo I've heard.
Sky daddy.
It's a weird way of phrasing that.
I've encountered that.
Okay.
I've encountered that in some interactions. I do chaplain work, and I interact with people who think that it is irrational and illogical. But I think it's interesting because we live in a culture today where people are increasingly irrational and illogical with the beliefs they hold.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think holding to a logical, reasonable faith, which I believe Christianity is seen as increasingly countercultural.
Yeah.
You know,
which is
so
to that
anyway.
point, what I find really interesting is I've seen a lot lately, and it hasn't really been like this, but I've seen the tides turn where they will look at the Christian faith and go, well, this is just like your subjective preference, right?
Right.
But
it's your truth.
But they'll accept that sort of line of reasoning for other things that aren't Christian, right?
Sure.
Certain like identities, certain subjective feelings about certain things. That's perfectly fine. But when you start bringing in like faith or God's existence, subjectivity, which they believe your faith is, doesn't have a play. They don't care.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it's due to because they know belief puts restrictions on other beliefs, right? But it seems very weird to me that it's okay on one side of the coin, but not okay on the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
It's strange to me. It's very unusual to me. So
I think that comes into like, and I've been saying it for a few episodes now, but like secularism has almost become its own religion.
Right.
And so I think like it's not so subjective as like it doesn't make sense to us because we're thinking it as like in the abstract, but it's actually its own kind of like religious ideology. So it's, to them, it's not much of a abstracted like view of thinking. It's more of like it goes against their own religion because everybody serves something. So everything has to have a religion, even if it's not a formal formally recognized religion, like secularism is.
Right.
The subjectivism is all part of their religion.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So Dr. Habermas falls in the line of like Aquinas, right? He thinks there's a good harmony between the two. And before we can get the grounds for how this harmony sort of works together, or what is subjective, subject to the other one, I should say, he's like, we need to define our terms. And because I'm on firm ground with him that the term faith has been so understood in the definition, yet in examples through Scripture of what faith actually is, right? He goes, let's start off by defining reason and faith. He goes, let's start off by defining reason. And what he does is there's two sort of concepts to the definition of reason that you get. So this is the definition of reason. I'm going to give a quick summation of it. It goes, the basis or motive for an action, decision, or conviction. A declaration made to explain or justify an action, decision, or conviction. Let me read that again. A declaration made to explain or justify an action, decision, and conviction. That's big, right? And he goes, the capacity for rational thought, inference, or discrimination, to think logically, to talk, or to argue logically or persuasively. And he goes, if this is the definition, which he gets from the American Dictionary of English Language, right? It's not his own. He's not making this up.
Right.
He goes, there's two sort of main concepts that he finds within this definition. And he goes, first is this. Reason is the capacity to infer or to even think rationally.
Okay.
Right? He goes, second, reason is the explanation or outworking of this capacity of rational thinking. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so he says this, being the basis for one's decision or convictions or a statement explaining or justifying these decisions or convictions, this gives us the ability to think logically. Let me read to you this quote on this, because then I want to go into Scripture for a quick second for you guys. He doesn't do that, but I want to. On page 75 of the book, let me read you this quote. He goes, if this is sort of the definition or concepts, and it's shown to be a valid one, other conclusions could be drawn from these two concepts of reason as well. For instance, reason would be at the very basis of all our knowledge, for one cannot have the capacity to think apart from reason by this definition. Without reason, the explanation or outworking of this capacity would also fail to be accounted for, because rational thought is defined as being at the basis of all actions, decisions, or convictions. In fact, we cannot even formulate these convictions or make decisions except by utilizing reason. Therefore, reason is the beginning of knowledge, since it becomes obvious that we could not even think in the sense which we are accustomed to except by reason. So he thinks reason and logic are the fundamental basis of all of our knowledge. You cannot have faith apart from reason.
Your capacity to even have faith is contingent on reason.
To even think about what you believe is foundational on reason. And that means then the necessary truths and logic is found within the formulation of our reason to even think about secondary beliefs or third level beliefs. Now, do you guys agree with that?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Because you literally cannot adopt a faith, whatever that faith is in, unless you have
and
reason.
He goes on
to
say even more, if you want to argue this definition is wrong, you have to use reason to do so. Which then assumes your conclusion you're trying to argue.
You're self-defeating.
You're self-defeating at this point. Bradley, what do you think about this?
You have to have some rationale for faith anyway. So, I mean, like you can't just have faith. I mean, I'm sure you could, but like there has to be some reason for you to have faith, I guess.
Yeah.
In something.
And either like you give an argument that's self-defeating, or you just have to change your nomenclature. You have to change the very definition of what reason is. So,
and which is interesting is, as we said in the beginning, if you look through a quick examination of history, this was not the belief. These early church believers and preachers and speakers thought that your belief in faith was not only like primary, the foundation and independent from our rationale. Isn't that very interesting? which is very strange because they tried to argue that this was the case.
But how do you argue, like...
It's true without reason.
How do you biblically make that case? That doesn't make any sense to me, because, like, Peter says, always give a reason for the hope that you have.
100%.
But do so with gentleness and respect. So
100%.
So how do you provide to somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus a reason for the hope that you have, for your faith, and not think that logic or reason has something to play in this?
And this goes into the second part. It goes, okay, now that we understand reason, right? He goes, let's talk about faith. And I want to, before I go into the definition that he uses from the American Heritage Dictionary, right? He doesn't use his own definition. He's like, I want to use as sort of objective as possible. What other sources say. I think historically, even in today's church, that if I were to go to a random Christian, right, a random believer, I would be very hard-pressed to think that they would understand faith biblically. And I have done this in sort of my doctorate research where I went to the high school, the Gen Z, right? And they understood faith as this blind leap, right?
Yeah.
This Pannenberg type sort of belief where you just have to believe it. It's not just believe it.
Like Nike, just do it.
Just do it.
Just believe it.
Just believe it. It is completely blind. It is completely independent of anything. Faith is no substance. It's just like it's given to you, right? And people read Ephesians, I think, grammatically wrong and stuff like that. But when you look at Scripture, I think clear understanding of faith pops out. And let me read you his definition that he puts in the book from this American Heritage, right? Faith is a confident belief in truth, value, or trustworthiness of a person, idea, or thing, or ... a system of religious beliefs. So this is what he says here. Let me break this down. It's trust in a person, thing, idea, value, truth, belief in a mental action centered on a conviction that is thought to be valid.
Yep.
And this definition includes the basis of such actions and convictions is reason, right? So this is what he says. When we look at faith, it's not just we can't know. We just sort of just believe these things, right? Mm-hmm. Faith, by definition, is belief in something that we can't with certainty know, but we base this belief off of fundamental things, such as actions you've seen, things you saw occur, trustworthiness in a belief or idea, and this trustworthiness is justified by rational and logical grounds.
And the thing is that God gives us solid reasons to believe.
Thank you.
We have the Scriptures. We have God incarnate.
Right.
we have the historical case for Jesus.
Right.
And so if God wanted us to adopt blind faith, why did he give us these things in the first place?
Right. If God just gave you faith like some people believe, that's your gift, which is not how the grammar works in that sentence there in that verse. But if it was just, here's what it is, based on nothing, I think not only is that unscriptural, I think that's irrational.
Sure.
And it's like, for instance, if you go to, let's just use a few examples. Let's go to Abraham, right? The foundation of where justification comes from. Abraham believed in God, and he was considered justified. Abraham believed the promise, right? But God showed up to Abraham, spoke to Abraham.
Sure did.
Revealed himself through creation to Abraham. It wasn't just, I had this thought about God and I believed and God credited it. God showed himself to him. So even Abraham's faith that was considered righteous was still based in rational grounds of knowing God was in front of him and speaking to him.
Right.
If you go to Moses believed God and did all these things, but guess what? God showed him reasons why he can go to. He showed up in a burning bush.
Yep.
He goes, when I go to Pharaoh, how can I trust, right, that you are who you say you are? And he goes, throw your rod on the ground, and it turned into a snake. You would be hard-pressed to find anywhere in Scripture where any sort of faith wasn't based in something that they could trust for this uncertainty
Where
that
God
they
gives
had.
some type of demonstration to where somebody could believe.
100%.
Parting of the Red Sea.
100%.
Manna in the wilderness.
I would like to I'd like to just interject there for a
Yeah,
second. I think that some faith isn't rooted in reason to begin with.
Okay, are you going to reason me to that conclusion?
Well, no. So some faith requires you to go on faith alone.
Well, I think we talked about that to
starts
some
off-
extent. Yeah.
I don't mean that it starts off without reason in the slightest.
Okay, so you at least agree it's the foundation of it.
No, I totally agree with that. I'm on board with that. I'm saying that, like, for example, and I know this example is way overused, and the end of the story doesn't, justify the beginning of the story. But Gideon, for example.
Okay.
So like Gideon had to go on faith throughout all the tests that he was giving God. Now, to be completely honest, if the ground was completely drenched and my cloak was dry, that might be enough for me to go on.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
But I mean, Gideon was, a coward. And he was marching into battle with way less men than he should have, in any tactical mind. And then he got to battle and he was instructed to break jars in order to fight the Philistines. Or was it the Philistines? I don't remember. But, Gideon had to go on faith and then was provided reason later on. But like marching up to the battle, he only had his faith to go on. Now God was giving him different signs throughout that, which is a basis of reason. But at some point, you do have to go on just faith.
Oh, 100%. I think we're on the same page.
Absolutely.
And how he defines faith, Bradley, and I think you would agree with this, is trust in, you do these things even though you don't have certainty, but the trust is rational in things already. Like you said, Gideon, like the cloak was dry. Gideon's going to be like, I don't know, and I agree with you, Bradley, if this happened around me, right? If the ground was just flooded and all of a sudden I'm like dry, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to trust, this person told me to go, I'm probably going to go, right? This is, because Gideon knew this is not what happens when you're in water.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and I think you're right. God does, you go on this trust to these uncertain sort of conclusions. And then when you arrive there, Gideon gets another sign, which then his trust is even girded even more to do the next thing without having certainty for God. And I think the problem here is we have been so raised, I have been raised in a culture where faith was just this void, this ungrounded, unwarranted sort of belief because we have a feeling that God exists, right? And I do think we can be properly basic that God shows up to you and have his experience, but I then base things because of this direct experience.
Well, and from my own personal upbringing, I didn't realize there were logical, reasonable arguments for believing in the inerrancy of Scripture, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus until I got to college. I was taught that you just believe, like, the Bible's the Word of God, Jesus died and rose again, just believe it, that's it.
Yeah.
But really, there's a ton of reasons for why we can logically conclude that these things have sound basis for them. The one thing, there is a lot of anti-intellectualism that's still in the church. I think we're starting to drift away from that more and more.
We need to.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
But I think one of the best arguments but the best analogy that I've heard, and I've used this analogy in my sermons before for faith. Imagine that you're going to be going on a trip. Say you're flying from Florida back to New York, Bradley, which you'll be doing in several months from now, right?
Yeah,
so
that's the plan.
So Bradley could do all the research on how planes work, on on the aerodynamics of it, how a plane engine functions, how to fly a plane, all of that type of stuff. But there comes a point, regardless of what you know, and here's what's true. Regardless of all the research you do, you can rationalize your way out of stepping onto that plane and allowing the pilot to fly you from point A to point B. That's just the reality. You could rationalize your way out of it. But faith is the point, regardless of all the research and all the stuff that you do prior to that, where you have to take an intentional step into that plane and say, I'm going to trust the pilot to take me from where I am to where I need to be. And that's what faith is. It's not devoid of reason. It's not separate from reason, but it works in tandem with it.
Exactly.
So,
and I think you can factor in, so many people fly every single day. You can factor in logic very easily into your faith.
Yeah.
So many people fly every day. So many people are okay every day. The planes are well built. That's all this stuff factors into your faith as well. Your faith, blind faith isn't, what we believe in, I'd say.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I
think blind faith is extremely dangerous. That's how you get cults. That's how you get, movements. Nazism kind of was blind faith, was built on blind faith, that the Jews are bad. And, how many billions of people died from that? World War II, great example of blind faith there. Blind faith is not what we want to do at all.
Right. Yeah.
We want to have reason. We want to, because, if you have blind faith, somebody could tell you something that's not true and you would just instantly trust it and go for it.
Well, and I think we have a version of that is very much entrenched in our culture today, where it's just parrot back the cultural narrative, say what we tell you to say is true.
Yeah.
If you question it, you're canceled, you're whatever.
Yeah.
So I think having Christianity stand as a faith that says, hey, we're not just saying this is what you should believe, we're giving you logical reasons why it makes sense to believe it.
Yeah.
And we're not forcing you to believe it either.
Yeah.
Like there was a point in time where Christianity and Christian morals and Christian ideals were at the epicenter of our culture.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to give those logical reasons. I think that's why you see so many examples of people who said, I never had that. I never was taught this way growing up. Like I was just told I needed to believe this.
Which is interesting.
The church, the church was a part of everything. So it just kind of, as anything with that much influence and culture would get, it just gets lazy. Yeah. And that's kind of what we're dealing with now is the church was lazy for so long that we're just dealing with the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
In our culture.
Well, that's what he points out too, because the question is, well, what about like other belief systems, right? And like Mike said, this was the epicenter, this was the belief. And granted, statistically, it's still the Christian, quote unquote Christian, right? Whatever division of that, right? It's still the majority sort of leader. But the question, one of the things he points out in this book is the reason why we need reason as fundamental, right? Is the fact that it can show you why some belief systems ought not to be believed.
Right.
And as people who are searching for truth, right, we ought to desire to know that which is what reality is telling, not what I think should be or what I feel should be, what reality is actually telling me about the way the world actually is. And to what you said, Mike, too, is it's not compelling. It's not supposed to be compulsive. I'm not supposed to determine you to do that because reason tells me that if I force you to believe this, what doesn't follow is that you actually believe this.
Right.
So compulsion doesn't bring out actual belief. And that is argued through...
It brings conformity.
It brings conformity, not belief.
Yeah.
So that's argued through a rational
We're
thought
told
process.
we're told not to be conformed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you guys ever hear this? This is reminding me of a video that I watched. It's one of my favorite videos on YouTube. It's called "Going Camping at the End of the World." It's by the Internet Historian. It's one of, if you've never seen this video before, it is one of the funniest videos on the internet. But it follows the story of Harold Camping.
Oh, I know who that is. Yeah.
He was the CEO of Family Radio, and he made a I think it was in the 90s. He made a quote unquote estimated reasonable prediction that the world was going to end. And so people like sold everything and just completely like put their faith in this guy and believed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the world didn't end. Surprise, spoiler alert, I guess.
Yep.
And a few like years later, he did the same thing.
Yep.
And those same people believed him again.
Yep.
And then again, he did it a few years later.
Yep.
He did it like 4 or 5 times where he said the world was going to end and he got the date wrong at some point. And people believed him just like completely blindly like that. And I think that, Ryan, this goes exactly with what you're saying. We have to have some logical backing to our faith. We can't just sell all of our items and, say, oh, the rapture is coming, we're done. If you just go to Revelations, or is it Revelations or is it Matthew, where Jesus says, no man shall know the date.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you just had read your Bible and used logical reason to influence, your view in some aspect, you could have found this out in 5 seconds.
Yeah, even just listen to the words of Jesus and you'd be fine.
Right.
Fun story about Harold Camping and the movement that he was at the center of. When I was in seminary, this is going back probably like 12, 13 years ago, I would drive out to the Midwest in Indiana. I would drive through Ohio, Ryan.
Yeah.
And I remember driving to Wesley Seminary, and I remember driving past billboards that were put up by Family Radio, and it said the exact date and time that the world was going to end. It was like June 12th, 2011 or something like that. And I'm like, all right, we'll see if they're right. And they were not.
Do you think they sent the check for the billboard prior? Or they're like, you know what? Send us an invoice.
Right. It's like they spent all this money on these billboards.
Send us
an
invoice.
And now...
Well, during 2012, when the world was supposed to end, the date that it was supposed to end on, I went to see Batman in the theater. So I was like, I was at the midnight showing. So I was like, if the world ends, at least I'm going out with Batman.
Right, exactly.
That's awesome.
It was a good way to end the night.
So after he goes through this, he brings up an interesting thought process, and I want to get your guys' point of view on this, and I want to read this first. He says, though faith relies on reason, right? We figured out which one was primary, right? Which is the base of our knowledge. He goes, but what doesn't follow from this is that which of the two is more important?
Okay.
Because that's another question, right? Yeah, one can be the basis of something, but does it follow that the basis of something is always of prime importance?
Well, look at your house. What's more important, the foundation or the structure? Like, it's hard to differentiate those things.
Right.
They're all important.
They're all important.
But I think that while reason is technically foundational, if I put my faith in the wrong object, that's going to lead to some pretty disastrous results.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously reason is the first mover. It's the precursor to faith. But if I put my faith in the wrong thing, that's gonna be rough.
And
it's gonna be a rough go.
It's kind of like a yin yang. You got a little bit of dark and light, and you got a little bit of light and dark. And they're perfectly imbalanced. And so reason and faith kind of work like that, where if you have too much faith, you can become, a Family Radio guy, and go sell all your goods. But if you become too grounded in reason, you won't allow faith in your life, and you'll become overly legalistic, or you'll be, overly searching for reason, and you won't be able to believe anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he says this, even though reason composes the groundwork, he still holds that faith, when it comes to religious belief, is the most important element. And he gives three reasons why. And I think his reasons are very rational. You know what I mean? He goes, 1, it is not possible to logically and reasonably prove everything in the world, let alone the Christian faith. Thus, faith extends beyond the reaches of reason, which is more limited. Now, I don't want you hearers to understand this. When faith extends, that doesn't mean faith is irrational. What he means by this is that reason and logic can only prove certain things up to a certain extent.
Right.
This is where faith, quote unquote, trust, right?
Getting on the plane.
And belief in this trust then takes you the rest of the way. Like, for instance, I have reasons to believe my wife loves me and won't cheat on me, right? But reason cannot prove that to any degree of certainty. But I have faith in these reasons that make me live a life in a way that acts as if she loves me and won't cheat on me. Right?
Right.
So even though it's the basis and groundwork, faith in a way transcends reason and can get you that extra distance. That's what he's getting here. So when it comes
and I mean, reason too can only encompass what you know at your time. Like, you know, if you go 500 years ago, you couldn't have proved that the earth was round or flat. Today, you know, thanks to technology, you can. So like reason can only get you so far.
Yes, I agree. He says this, although reason can yield true data from a logical investigation of facts, faith can transcend the rational when one trusts these facts. Therefore, one exercises faith based on reasonable probabilities. Faith is needed, which appropriates and trusts the evidence and this has, it goes with definite ethical implications for one's life. So he goes, though we understand faith as this, he says, more important element, right? Into the degree of that it transcends reason, but it can transcend it because it trusts our reason and logic to be able to take us that extra step.
Right. Well, as Bradley was talking just a little bit ago, there was a quote that came to mind. It's not original to me. I don't know what the original source is, but I think it's relevant here that if we allow kind of like that balance of faith and reason, if we allow one over the other, if we don't have our faith grounded in reason, what ends up happening is, here's the quote, we become so heavenly minded that we're of no earthly use.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's easy just to be focused on, you know, on Jesus, on the scriptures, on leaning into my church community, on my faith. All of those things are critical, but those things should ground you in the world that you're in right now. And reason allows us to do that. It allows us to engage with the people around us who don't know Jesus yet. Yeah. But leaning too heavily and just taking that blind faith leap, what ends up happening is we become disconnected from the people around us. Yeah. And we don't form those intentional relationships where we can influence people towards following Jesus. And if we believe that what Jesus says is true, if we have a sound basis for that, we need to be able to engage with the world on it. So we don't want to get to the point where we don't have the ability to connect with people. And I think, you know, taking those blind leaps of faith can cause us to just disconnect from the world around us. Yeah. So,
and that goes both ways too, you know, with reason as well.
Yeah, it does.
That was one thing that I was trying to get at too, was that, you know, being overly focused on reason doesn't leave room for faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Agree.
Let me read you these quotes for a second. Paul Van Buren writes this: faith usually includes both logical contemplation and consideration of historical sources, and these in turn involve reasoning. John R. Stott, you guys have probably heard of these people.
I've heard of John Stott, yep.
Faith is not irrational. It is neither credulity nor optimism. Rather, it is a trust based upon reason, rational belief. Francis Schaeffer, Rationality is very important, but not to the exclusion of the other elements. A balance must be kept between both of them.
Absolutely.
And so as we go into part 2 next time we record, Gary Habermas, I think, is very grounded. And he goes, do you know what? If this is the case, and this is something we should believe, we should be able to investigate through reason and logic, in which faith then can take over based on these sources, based on these arguments,
Right.
based on the contemplation of certain events and data points. And because of this, he goes, let's dive into 3 of the main probabilities and possibilities that he's seen. Now, it's not all of them, but 3 of the important ones that he's seen in the now day and age. And next time that we come to you guys, we're going to be diving into the rest of the book and looking at these 3 sort of possibilities of the historical data.
All right. Well, that wraps up our time for this episode of The Caffeinated Christian. Thank you for listening to us. It's nice that we're just not talking into a vacuum, that we just actually have people that are hearing what we have to say.
It's true.
And we hope that it edified you and encouraged you and maybe challenged you. Please give us a 5-star rating or whatever rating you want if you're listening. Just be honest. And wherever you get your podcast, give us a rating. And if you want to connect with us on social media, we don't post there all the time, but we do check our Facebook and Instagram messages regularly. So if you want to give us suggestions on future episodes, topics that you'd like us to talk about, just shoot us a message.
Yeah.
Books. Yep. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Caffeinated Christian Podcast. All right. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.